She didn't become distant. She became careful. And that's where most men misunderstand what they're seeing because from the outside, it feels confusing. One moment, she's warm, engaged, almost emotionally present in a way that feels rare. And the next, she pulls back. Her replies slow down. Her energy shifts. There's a hesitation that wasn't there before. You assume something is wrong. You assume she's losing interest. But what if the opposite is happening? What if the very behavior that's making you question her is actually a sign that she's thinking about you more than she wants to admit? This is where perception fails because you're focusing on what she does instead of why she does it. A woman who is indifferent doesn't become inconsistent. She becomes predictable in her absence. She fades cleanly and quietly. No internal conflict, no emotional friction. But when she's secretly obsessed, it creates tension inside her. And tension always leaks into behavior. You start noticing small things. She remembers details you forgot you even shared. She brings up something you said days ago almost casually, but there's intention behind it. She watches how you react, not obviously, not in a way that demands attention, but subtly like she's studying you. Then suddenly she withdraws, not because she doesn't care, but because she cares too much. And that feeling is unfamiliar to her. So she manages it not by expressing more, but by controlling exposure. This is where men misread the situation completely. You interpret her pullback as rejection. You feel the shift and assume disinterest. You start chasing clarity, asking questions, trying to fix something that isn't broken. But what's actually happening beneath the surface is far more complex. She's not stepping away from you. She's stepping away from how much you're starting to affect her. Because when a woman becomes emotionally invested in a way she didn't expect, her first instinct isn't always to move closer, it's to regain control. And that's the subtle behavior most men overlook. She doesn't disappear. She adjusts. Her presence becomes measured. Her words become more thoughtful. She's still there, but not in the same way. And that difference is the signal not of distance, but of depth. The kind of depth that she hasn't fully processed yet. And until she does, her behavior will feel like a contradiction. Warm, then distant, present, then quiet, interested, but controlled because she's not just reacting to you anymore. She's reacting to what you're starting to mean to her, and that changes everything. To understand this behavior, you have to stop looking at attraction as something simple because it isn't. Attraction, especially for women, is deeply psychological. It's layered with emotion, self-protection, past experiences, and internal narratives she may not even be consciously aware of. This is where most men misunderstand. You think obsession looks obvious. You expect intensity, constant communication, clear signals, but real emotional fixation doesn't always express itself loudly. Sometimes it becomes quieter, more controlled, more strategic. Because what's actually happening beneath the surface is not just attraction, it's attachment forming in real time. And attachment changes behavior. When a woman starts thinking about you beyond the moment when you occupy her mind, even when you're not present, it creates a shift in her internal world. You become relevant, not just socially, but emotionally. And that relevance carries risk, because the more she feels, the more she has to lose. So instead of leaning fully into that feeling, she begins to manage it. She might delay responding not because she doesn't want to talk, but because she's aware of how quickly she wants to. She might seem slightly distant after a deep conversation. Not because it didn't matter, but because it mattered too much. You're focusing on what she does instead of why she does it. Every pause, every shift in tone, every moment of restraint is her trying to stay in control of something that's slowly pulling her in. This is the psychology of concealed obsession. It's not chaotic. It's controlled. And that control is exactly what makes it difficult to recognize. She won't overwhelm you with attention. She'll give just enough, then pull back. She'll engage deeply, then create space, not to confuse you, but to regulate herself. Because when emotions build faster than expected, the instinct isn't always to accelerate. Sometimes it's to slow everything down. And that's where her behavior becomes misunderstood. You interpret inconsistency, but what you're actually seeing is internal conflict. A part of her wants to move closer. Another part is trying to protect her from moving too fast. And the result is this push and pull dynamic that feels unpredictable. But it's not random. It's patterned. And once you understand the pattern, everything starts to make sense because her actions are not disconnected. They're deeply connected to how much she's starting to feel. And the more she feels, the more carefully she moves, not away from you, but around the intensity of what's building inside her. If you pay close attention, the patterns start to reveal themselves, not in grand gestures, but in subtle repetitions. She circles back. That's the first sign. Even after pulling away, even after creating distance, she finds a way to re-engage. A message, a reaction, a question that doesn't seem necessary but carries emotional weight. This is where most men misunderstand. You think her absence is the full story, but you ignore her return, and her return is never accidental. It's intentional because when a woman is secretly obsessed, she can't stay away completely. She may try to create space, but she always leaves a door open. Another pattern is emotional memory. She doesn't just remember facts about you, she remembers how things felt, the tone of a conversation, the way you reacted to something small, the energy between you in specific moments, and she brings those moments back, not directly, but through references, callbacks, subtle mentions. This isn't casual. This is emotional tracking. You're focusing on what she does instead of why she does it. A woman who isn't invested doesn't revisit emotional moments. She moves forward lightly, but when she's fixated, she revisits, replays, reanalyzes, and that internal process shows up in her behavior. Then there's the shift in her attention. It becomes selective. She may not always respond quickly, but when she does, she's fully present. Her replies carry thought. There's depth, even in simple conversations, because she's not engaging out of habit, she's engaging with intention. And intention is always tied to importance. Another subtle sign is her sensitivity to your behavior. Small changes in your tone, your energy, your responsiveness, they don't go unnoticed. She may not call it out directly, but it affects her. Because when someone occupies space in your mind, their behavior starts to matter more than you'd like it to. And that's what's happening here. She's paying attention even when she pretends not to. But perhaps the most overlooked pattern is restraint. She holds back not just physically, but emotionally. There are moments where she could express more, say more, reveal more, and she chooses not to. That restraint is not a lack of feeling. It's the presence of it. Because when emotions are strong, expression becomes risky. And risk triggers caution. So she measures her words, she controls her reactions, she creates a version of herself that feels composed even when internally things are far less controlled. And if you don't understand this, you'll misread everything. You'll think she's unsure, you'll think she's inconsistent, you'll think she's not fully interested. But in reality, she's deeply involved. Just not in a way that's obvious, because the deeper the emotion, the quieter it tends to become. The biggest mistake men make in this situation is reacting to the surface. You see her pull back, and you chase. You feel her hesitation, and you try to compensate. You notice inconsistency, and you push for clarity. But this approach doesn't solve anything. In fact, it disrupts the very dynamic that's revealing her interest, because what you're responding to isn't disinterest, it's emotional regulation. This is where most men misunderstand. You assume that more effort from you will stabilize the situation, but what's actually happening beneath the surface is that she's already feeling the weight of the connection, and when you add pressure, it amplifies her need to regain control. So she pulls back even more, not because she's losing interest, but because the emotional intensity is no longer balanced. You're focusing on what she does instead of why she does it. If you understood the why, your response would change completely. Instead of chasing her consistency, you would become consistent yourself. Instead of reacting to her fluctuations, you would remain grounded, because the truth is her behavior is not a test of your value. It's a reflection of her internal state, and your role is not to fix that state, it's to remain unaffected by its fluctuations. This creates something powerful, stability. And stability is what allows her to feel safe moving closer, because right now she's navigating unfamiliar emotional territory. She's trying to understand how much she feels, how fast it's developing, and whether it's safe to lean into it. If you become reactive, you become another variable she has to manage. But if you remain steady, you become the one constant she can rely on. And that shifts everything, because now, instead of needing to control the dynamic, she can start to relax into it. Her guarded behavior begins to soften. Her restraint becomes less necessary. Her engagement becomes more natural. Not because you forced it, but because you didn't disrupt it. This is the mindset shift. You don't interpret her behavior emotionally. You interpret it psychologically. You stop asking, "What is she doing?" and start asking, "What is she managing?" And once you see it that way, her actions stop feeling confusing. They start feeling predictable because they're no longer random. Their responses to emotion, she's still learning how to handle. And your job is not to rush that process, but to understand it. When you finally see it clearly, everything becomes quieter. Not externally, but internally. You stop overanalyzing every delay. You stop reacting to every shift. You stop trying to force certainty out of something that's still unfolding, because now you understand what's really happening. She's not pulling away from you. She's adjusting to you, adjusting to the way you make her feel, adjusting to the space you're starting to occupy in her mind. And that process is never linear. There will still be moments of distance, moments of hesitation, moments where her behavior doesn't fully align with what you expect. But now those moments don't confuse you because you see the pattern beneath them. This is where most men finally get it. Attraction isn't always expressed through closeness. Sometimes it's expressed through control. And the more a woman feels, the more carefully she moves. Not because she's unsure of you, but because she's becoming aware of how much you matter. And that awareness changes everything. It slows her down. It makes her more intentional. It makes her protect something she hasn't fully defined yet. And if you misread that as disinterest, you'll walk away from something real. But if you understand it, you'll stop trying to accelerate what needs time. You'll stop reacting to what's actually a sign of depth. You'll allow the connection to evolve naturally. And that's where real attraction stabilizes, not in intensity, but in consistency over time. Because once she feels safe enough, once the internal tension settles, once she no longer feels the need to control every interaction, her behavior aligns. The warmth becomes steady. The engagement becomes effortless. The connection becomes clear, not because it suddenly appeared, but because it was there all along, just hidden beneath layers of hesitation and self-protection. And now you can see it, not through what she says, but through what she manages. Because understanding her behavior was never about decoding signals, it was about understanding emotion. And once you do that, everything changes. If this made you see things differently, subscribe, because understanding her mind changes.